And welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again, and happy holidays. Today, I am going to share my review of The Terror Beneath, an investigative role-playing game of weird folk horror from Osprey Games. This is written by Scott Mulhouse with artwork provided by Brainbug Design. This 128-page hardcover is available now, carries an MSRP of $30. And if you want to get just the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $24.50. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got The Terror Beneath. A few things to mention before we jump on in. First of all, my friends over at Osprey Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's very important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a very good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then there is a short adventure at the end of this volume. Normally, I would tell players to tune out when we got to that point, but the reality is I am not going to share any spoilers. And even if we happen to land on a couple of pages as I'm flipping on through, you're really not going to see anything to ruin any surprises. So as a player, you can watch this from start to finish. Also want to mention, if your game master is thinking about picking this up, let them know about this review. That way they can approach The Terror Beneath and make a far more informed buying decision. All right, let's dive on in. So, The Terror Beneath is based on the works of Arthur Machen. And Machen was a writer in the late 19th and into the early 20th century, and he actually tackled a lot of genres, one of them being horror. And is probably best known as being a major influence on H.P. Lovecraft. In fact, H.P. Lovecraft considered him to be pretty much the master of horror at that point in time. Now, I'll be very honest, I have only read a couple of Machen's stories over the years, The Great God Pan, as well as the novel of the White Powder. Important to keep in mind, we are not talking about Stephen King sort of horror. We're not talking about Clive Barker sort of horror. This is a far more genteel sort of horror than even Lovecraftian horror. So Machen wrote about weird science, pagan rituals, the veil that separates our world from the other world, which is where the Fae are and various pagan gods and so on and so forth. He was, well, having read a couple of stories, I have noticed and I have heard from other people who've read much more of Machen's stories that his tales tend to be a slow burn, and then there's a reveal at the end, as opposed to nonstop pulse pounding terror. One thing that I can tell you from the two stories I've read by Machen is that he establishes tone very nicely. Okay, so just so you know, that's what this is based on, those stories. This is built upon the Gumshoe system. And if you follow the Gaming Gang, you know I like the Gumshoe system. I appreciate the fact that it's an investigative system and the players don't have to roll dice to find clues. That is one of the things that tends to derail Call of Cthulhu adventures all the time, is if the keeper is a stickler for making sure that players roll dice to get all the clues. A lot of times people fail those rolls and they're left in the dark. That never happens with Gumshoe. As far as the character creation, the player characters are all members of this society, the Gold Tiberius Society. So that's how they're tied together. and they investigate strange goings on. And you're going to have kind of backgrounds, and then you will have an occupation, which is going to give you your abilities. So we've got investigative abilities, and then we also have general abilities. Investigative abilities, the points you have in those represent your expertise. Now, it's very possible that you're going to have quite a few different abilities you have a 0 in. So it is strongly recommended, in fact, in just about any game that uses Gumshoe, that you make sure that all of the abilities are covered by your characters. So this provides not only an opportunity for each of the players to have the spotlight on them during adventures, because not everyone is going to have the same abilities. It's also going to guarantee that your team is never going to be in a situation where they don't have some sort of option to tackle it, that there's somebody there who has some sort of expertise, regardless if it's investigative or if it's general abilities. So if you're talking about investigative, what you'll have, and here's an example of some of the investigative, like folklore, geology, linguistics, notice, religion, military history. What you'll see is you'll have points in that showing what your expertise is. So in a situation where you're looking for clues, you're looking for information, all the player needs to do is explain what they're doing and what ability applies. And then if there's a clue that would be available to somebody who's got that ability, they receive the clue. So they can spend points from their pool. So as an example, let's say it was something that involved geology and the player character has 3 points in it. They could spend a point to improve the quality of the information they received. So that's how those points are spent. Now, with general abilities, you are going to be rolling a die. So you're going to roll a 6-sided die and you spend those points on improving those die rolls. So as far as general abilities, we've got athletics, health, fighting, sneaking, sense trouble. You can spend those points to improve your die roll, because the game master is going to come up with a target number between 2 and 8. 2 is pretty simple. 8 is pretty damn difficult. And the player must meet or exceed that number. Now, there are various ways for other characters to assist and piggyback and all these other things. But as far as the overall core mechanic to it, you would say, okay, so as an example, you're in a fight. I'm going to spend 1 point of fighting on this die roll. So you always spend the point or points first before you roll. You don't roll and then say, oh, okay, well, I missed, but I can add. You have pushes. Each character is going to get a couple of pushes for each of the adventures. Now, something that's also very important to keep in mind is that when these points get spent, they don't refresh right away. So this isn't like 5e where it's like, oh, I've used all my spells and now I'm going to rest and I get all my spells back. No, a lot of times there are very specific things that must take place to refresh some of your points. There are some aspects where you won't get, like, say, pushes back until the adventure's over. And I do like the fact that the players don't have unlimited resources, that they do have to pick and choose where they're going to spend their points. Important to keep in mind as far as combat goes in the Terror Beneath, it's a bit different than standard Gumshoe because it is very abstract. So very focused on narrative as opposed to, oh, what happened for these 10 seconds. So first thing, you're going to end up doing is each side is going to determine what is their objective. What are they trying to do? So are they trying to escape? Are they trying to obtain something that the target has or targets have? Are they looking to subdue them? Are they looking to kill them? That will determine the difficulty number that they have to deal with. And then each of the players are going to say, what is their character doing? What are they looking to accomplish? So rather than saying, okay, well, as my action, I pull my gun, the player would say, okay, so I'm going to draw my pistol and I'm going to empty the magazine at this creature that's, rushing at us or what have you. So I like that. I thought it was pretty cool. I do like that quite a bit. So as far as the rules themselves, pretty light. Gumshoe is relatively light. It can be a bit crunchier depending on what game you're looking at. But here in The Terror Beneath, I would say it's a little bit lighter than some of the other games that I've encountered that do utilize the Gumshoe mechanics. Should also point out that you don't have hit points. You, of course, have a general ability of health, and then you take injury cards. So we've got two different sorts of cards, and they are injury and shock. And there's an option if you want to take a more pulpy approach to The Terror Beneath that a character can survive until they have their fourth injury card, and then they take a dirt nap, where the standard terror version is that they have three injury cards they can have. Well, the third injury card is what kills them. So there are some cards that you would utilize that are in the back of the book here. And there's also a download that you can get so you can print them off, because the reality is the way they're presented here at the back, not very good. Very difficult. Are you going to like copy that, take a photo of it, print it out, and then cut them out? Because they're cards. And a lot of times you're actually going to randomly get an injury or a shock. So it's important to keep in mind that there is a download. If I remember, I think it's a PDF. I don't think it's a JPEG that you can get. So a good chunk of the page space in The Terror Beneath is devoted to the game master talking about the game world, the setting. There is sorcery, just a few different spells. And this is not a game where your investigators are going to be like Call of Cthulhu investigators, where they'll have some access to various different occult magics by way of tomes and things like that. It would be a pretty major accomplishment for a character in The Terror Beneath to actually know a couple of spells, let alone have a whole grimoire of spells. So we also get some advice on how to run The Terror Beneath. We also get a bestiary with various different creatures. As far as the production quality, Osprey Games always puts together really nice books because, of course, obviously enough, there's an offshoot of Osprey Publishing. I will say this is pretty light on artwork, especially in this section here. The artwork itself, it's fine. I can't say that it blew me away or anything like that, but it's not awful either. Myself personally, I just think that the design style of the artwork is kind of an unusual choice. Just my opinion here. But as you can see, got quite a good amount of content in here. Then we have a short adventure. The adventure is all of about 10 pages, 11 pages. It seems okay. Keep in mind that as far as the Gumshoe sort of adventures, you're going to see that they are very linear. They are scene based, which obviously enough in a game that is very intertwined with investigation and mystery, that tends to be the case. You don't usually run across a lot of sandbox mystery games. So, or just created on the fly sort of games. So that is a peek inside the terror beneath from Osprey Games. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts and my review score. I like the terror beneath. I think it's pretty interesting. I'll be the first to point out, I don't know how much mileage you're going to get out of the Machen stories. I think there's fewer than a dozen horror stories that he wrote. So there is that. Also, keep in mind, as far as I understand, I've only read those two stories, as I pointed out. His tales tend to be kind of a slow burn. So, as far as a pulse pounding terror role playing game, this isn't it. Even though it's called The Terror Beneath, this is going to be more of a kind of genteel investigative horror game, almost along the lines possibly of, say, Vason from Freely Publishing. There are some similarities in tone with Vason here with The Terror Beneath. Kudos to designer Scott Malthouse for actually making some tweaks to the Gumshoe system of mechanics. It's not just a complete port of Gumshoe. So there are some tweaks here. Combat's different. As far as health and dying is different. We've got those injury cards. We've got those shock cards. Now, once again, may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I think overall that this has been implemented quite well. I don't know what kind of support this is going to get from Osprey Games. Sorry to say, most of the times when I do a review of an Osprey Games role-playing game, I have to tell you straight up, I don't know if this is going to be a one and done or if we will see other content in the future, if we're going to see maybe a campaign adventure, or if the Terror Beneath is just about all you're going to get. I don't know. So always keep that in mind because I got to be honest, I usually will ding an Osprey Games release because of that. So I do recommend The Terror Beneath. I don't believe it's for everyone. I don't think it's a horror role playing game that's going to appeal to everyone. But if you enjoy the stories of Arthur Machen, then I would definitely say that this should be on your radar. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give The Terror Beneath a 7 out of 10. Do recommend it. Should check it out. If it sounds like it's up your alley, it probably will be. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, happy holidays. I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.